What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the weekly Sunday show where we're going to share some news with you. We've got an interesting lens this week, and of course, we are here to answer your guys' questions. So if you've got questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. Luke, good to see you, man. I'm Chris Grant, and to my right is my paleomorphous co-host, Chris Rasick. Now, for those of you who may be new here, our job is to try to make your life a little bit easier as a seller. Maybe you've got questions about flipping stuff from the retail shelves. Maybe you want to pull the trigger on some online arbitrage. Perhaps you want to start making cold calls to get yourself into wholesale, or you're just curious about a Keepa chart quandary. Well, we're here to help. We'll also share some stats, some news stories, and the occasional business maxim to help you be a better business owner. Chris, how's Sunday treating you, man?
So far, so good. One of those days I had a lot of luck with old leads.
Ooh,
which is
nice.
Yeah. There's just I'll continue to say it until I notice any kind of change. Can never count on the bulk of sellers actually going back over their old data. It is a gold mine.
Yeah, and I think that right now is especially good. I too have had some good luck looking back at 90 days, 45 days over the past week. There was one particular sale that I found, and I was able to go back. I think I found a lead from late 2023 from this site that was still profitable. And so, yeah, and I know that other people just aren't doing it.
Yep. It's a good investment of your time.
Right. Now, before we hopped on the show, I got to bring this up. I saw some swag in your hand that I think a lot of people might be a little jealous of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ollie's travel mug.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm actually... My family knows I shop at Ollie's so much. I don't know if I ever told you that I used to take the girls with me out of necessity, and they are not a fan of going item by item, and covering the entire shelves. They run out of patience pretty quick. So, and then in the store, it's like every 10 minutes they run some sort of ad, and they have the slogan, Ollie's, good stuff, cheap, right? It's on the other side of the, right? So my girls actually have a slogan. They'll say, Ollie's, don't make us go. So but my family knows somebody actually purchased that for me.
That was nice.
And just bought it immediately, knowing that was something that I would need in my collection.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
I wish I traveled as much as my mug collection would indicate.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I've got I've bought Rose like some Starbucks stuff from like Japan off eBay, and yeah, I've never gone that far away from home. All right. Well, before he created his chocolate empire, Milton Hershey had already failed 3 times, and his caramel business was like right on the edge of collapse. But instead of quitting, instead of throwing in the towel, he actually doubled down and ended up buying some chocolate making equipment that honestly he couldn't afford. But why did he do this? Well, when he was getting started out, he actually believed that chocolate was the future. And that bet, well, it became the company that you all know and probably all love, Hershey's. It's become one of the most beloved brands on the planet. Matter of fact, so beloved that in Hershey, Pennsylvania, you can actually go to the factory and ride through the factory on sort of a roller coaster type of thing. It's very interesting if you have not been. Now, and Hershey did not get this right the first time, but the thing is he kept showing up. He kept learning, he kept testing, he kept iterating. And that's exactly why I write the Clear the Shelf newsletter of 5 smart things for Amazon sellers every single Friday. It comes out at 7:40 p.m. every single week. It's kind of a weekly reminder that smart sellers, that they don't just guess, they learn, they evolve, they get better, and they keep showing up. So if you're serious about getting better every single week, week after week, head over to cleartheshelf.com/newsletter. Get subscribed. That's cleartheshelf.com/newsletter. It costs you less than a Hershey bar. It is absolutely free. And the reason I want you to sign up is because sometimes the fourth try is the one that sticks. And so I want you to keep at it, and I'll keep motivating you every single week. All right. We have got we've got some interesting things. And Jeff, thank you for the question. We will make sure to get to that here in a moment. And of course, as we go through these guys, make sure you drop your questions in the chat. We'll get to those. The first thing on the docket is Keepa quietly released a bit of a new sourcing weapon. It's under the seller overview tab on Keepa.com. There's a section called Top Overlapping Competitors. And here's what it does. It shows you 10 storefronts that have the most product catalog overlap. It's a mouthful with the seller that you're looking at. So if you're looking at your storefront on seller overview, you're going to be able to see what 10 stores overlap the most with yours. If you're looking at pattern, you're going to see, the same thing. It displays the storefront name, the seller ID, and also the percent of shared ASINs from that particular storefront, and gives you a nice clean look into kind of seller networks and maybe even niches that your competitors are operating in. It's kind of the sourcing equivalent of discovering backlinks if you're into search engine optimization, or were, if it still exists. It's not just about like who you're watching in the moment, but also about who they're connected to. And I got to give a shout to Luke and also Steve. I saw these guys post about it before I could ever get around to it. So what I did is I started thinking, well, how could this be useful? And so I jotted down 5 ideas. Now, these are not fully formed, but hopefully they at least ignite a spark where you can think about some other ways to use this particular feature. So number 1, you can run overlapping sellers through Keepa Product Finder. Grab all of those storefront IDs, and then don't just check the original seller's catalog if you're doing a little manual storefront stalking, but grab 5 or 10 overlapping ones, and you're going to kind of increase the surface area for serendipity. If those sellers sell some of the same things, but they're also got other things in their catalogs, well, then you can go after all of those. You can maybe create a little bit of a competitor web. Click into each overlapping seller, then click into their overlapping sellers, and do this over and over again and start building a watch list of sellers that look like they're doing a good job. It's kind of a sourcing spider web. And I know that this is a word that Chris abhors. For those of you who graduated from the University of Michigan, that means does not like. You can find replens that others are replenishing. So watch overlapping sellers that go in and out of stock on the same ASINs. And then if they're repeatedly restocking those items, and you can find it, which with Google you should be able to, well, that may be a replenishable opportunity that you could take advantage of. You might be able to identify some wholesale clusters. So if you happen to see maybe 3 sellers that are all carrying a brand like raw sugar, or I don't know, Ticonderoga pencils, since back to school season's coming up, well, that might be a signal. Maybe you want to go and look for suppliers for those types of things. Give them a call, see if you can open an account. And then you could also benchmark your own storefront. See who you're overlapping with and what are you missing. If you're a good seller or think you're a good seller, there's probably going to be some good sellers that are overlapping with you. What are they into that you're not? What niche have they looked into that you haven't looked into? What products are they sourcing that you're not sourcing? Or maybe you've even skipped over thinking it's not good. And then the other thing is where are they pricing better than you? Is there an opportunity there, or are they just liquidating? Are they perhaps getting a better cost of goods sold than you are for some reason? Okay, you can't know for sure, but these are things that you should start thinking about if other people are beating you on price. kind of gives you an easy way to self-audit a little bit. So I'll come up with some more ideas, but those were just the ones kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah, those are good ones. I mean, this is really neat. I like the implications for storefront stocking with this. It's definitely going to enhance things. I immediately thought of Storefront Stalker Pro. You know that I'm a big fan of the tool. It's all about the types of sellers that you can find that you enter into your dashboard, and that you actually stock on a regular basis. It's fun, because if the key is the biggest value that I've had is finding somebody who's doing manual sourcing, and if you watch it and you kind of, you go through some of their ASINs as they populate on the dashboard, you could pretty much figure out what kind of sourcing they're doing. And when you find the manual sourcer, that's gold, so now taking this, I could put that IDs in of the manual sourcing storefronts, find some overlap, and maybe, you're not looking for a super high percentage, I would imagine, but a lower percentage means they're probably not in the same, cook group or sourcing circle, sourcing network, or whatever you want to call it. And then you can branch out and you can proliferate the good storefronts that you look at on a regular basis with this. I can't wait to check this out. I haven't dug in personally, but I am really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I think there's going to be a lot of cool opportunities that come out of this, and I'm gonna start messing around with, like, maybe adding in a couple of storefronts together and see what kind of similarities there are. Inside of the Keepa product finder, they now have those kind of like the search. I can't remember what they call it, but it kind of gives you the overview of the search, like what's the average sales rank, what's the average number of sellers, et cetera, and so on. Well, like, what happens when you just take 3 or 4 stores and put those in, or I think people will be surprised. I can't remember how long ago I did this, but there was a Twitter post that I made where I took some really big sellers where I happened to find some storefronts of people that I know, and I started looking at some of the averages in their storefronts. And I think people would be very surprised at maybe how much they're limiting themselves in their sourcing compared to some of these very big, very smart sellers. I think there'll be a lot to learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not nearly as sexy as our imaginations
right
play it out to be.
Right. All right. Next piece, and again, Luke, appreciate that. You were the first one I saw post about that. I saw Steve post about it after that. I was upset that it was not something I found, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So I read an interesting article. I did not watch the entire video that went along with it, but this piece called "What Cancel Buttons Can Teach Amazon Sellers About Growth." In 2002, way back in the day, Jeff Bezos put on a presentation at MIT, and he told a story that was interesting. He said that internal Amazon teams were really nervous about giving customers the power to cancel their own orders. They worried about fraud. They worried about customer churn. And they also worried about some operational chaos. How do you make sure that the item doesn't get packed and shipped before the system catches up that it's canceled and it should not go to the fulfillment center? So they're worried about all that kind of stuff. But Bezos, he saw it differently. Instead of arguing hypotheticals and going back and forth, he said, let's just run an experiment. Well, that experiment worked. And his whole thesis was, if you give people more control over their environment, maybe they'll order more. Well, they did, and he was right. By giving customers this self-service control, Amazon built trust, which got people to come back, and that trust turned into higher retention and turned into more spending. Bezos also used this moment to hammer home a bigger point. Make experiments cheap. Because when experimentation is expensive, well, people tend not to innovate nearly as much. And Bezos wasn't talking to FBA sellers. He was talking to a group of nerds at MIT, but his logic applies perfectly to anyone building an arbitrage business or a wholesale business on Amazon. Number one, stop debating and just test. I think too many people waste their time debating tiny tweaks in their sourcing or a small change to maybe their opening pitch to a supplier, or how they're going to reach out to a manager at a retail store. Or maybe they go back and forth for days, either with themselves, amongst a group of peers, or even with ChatGPT about a little tweak they want to make to their repricing strategy. Well, Bezos would just say, why don't you just run an A/B test and then decide when you have some data? And then the other thing is that small wins compound. That cancel button, it never made headlines, but it quietly helped Amazon build trust, which built a moat for them. It was a small win that compounded on other wins that they had. And your arbitrage business, well, it works the exact same way. Every dollar you can get back from a brand that gets gated, every reimbursement you can claw back that's rightfully owed to you, every extra percent you can save on your sourcing cost, and every extra 50 cents you can get in cash back, well, they all matter and they all add up in the long run. And I'll be honest, I actually have some data that shows that way too many people are overlooking these small wins in favor of speed. And it's not what you should be doing.
You know, before he became the evil billionaire, trillionaire, the guy was pretty freaking smart.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I feel sad that we're past the point of giving him credit for the mind, for his mind.
Do you think it's the TRT? Is that when we stopped?
Tough to tell. Yeah. It's, I know the buying out the 5 plots in Miami and you know the Doomsday Bunker. You know, that certainly didn't help. It's tough to pinpoint the exact point. But this one, you know, this has to be smart, because I mean, even listening to you describe it, it still doesn't. I still don't feel like I comprehend it fully. Mm-hmm. You know. Because it's counterintuitive, you know, give people the freedom, you know, to experiment and cancel the stuff. It seems to go against everything that commerce, you know, that you learn about commerce. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is a good one. This is pretty interesting. I might have to sit on this for a while.
Yeah. I'll have to find the video again. It's the whole talk of him at MIT. I've watched bits and pieces of it, and it's good. You know, it's really good. All right, so that's all the news this week. Rather than a razor or anything like that, I've got a lens for you guys. Why do sellers double down on bad inventory, maybe even slash prices irrationally, and sometimes even chase deals when they shouldn't be? Well, there's a single mental model that sort of explains it all. And Charlie Munger, one of perhaps my favorite business philosopher, he called it the deprival super reaction syndrome. It's a mouthful, but it's an incredibly powerful lens that you can use to analyze seller behavior and even your own behavior. All right. So here's the gist. We overreact to loss, especially when something was almost ours and then it gets taken away. It's not just I lost money, it's I almost made money. And that's the thing that tends to hurt even more. All right. And that pain, well, it makes us do dumb things. Maybe it makes you overbuy the next time a similar product pops up. All right. I've seen this just about every single Q4. Magic Mixies were awesome 2 years ago, Well, they got to be awesome this year too. I'm going to have to go deep on the front end. It also makes people hold on to bad inventory so that they can avoid admitting defeat. It makes them slash prices irrationally to try to win back the buy box or to try to get the buy box reinstated after it's been suppressed when it's not necessary. It also might make people to chase leads from sources after those sources have kind of been burned and they're not good anymore. Like, loss aversion is bad, but the deprival super reaction syndrome is like loss aversion did a fat rail off the back of a toilet in a nightclub bathroom. All right. Now, where does it show up when you're doing arbitrage? Well, number one, sourcing regret might equal bad future buys. You just missed out on a lead that you knew and obviously is going absolutely crazy. So the next time a marginal deal comes up, well, you buy it with feelings rather than your filters. Inventory that should have been liquidated months ago, but you can't let it go. You still remember the idea of what that ASIN should have done, so it sits and rots and collects fees. Policy changes and restrictions. Amazon takes away your favorite brand or part of your favorite brand. Well, you panic. Maybe you even skirt the rules a little bit to get around it or get it back and sell it on ASINs that are not properly branded. Not necessarily because it's a great brand, but just because you feel robbed of something that you should have access to. Buy box wars. You lose the buy box to someone who's undercutting, or maybe someone who's a new seller, or that jerk with a 25% seller feedback rating that's still allowed to sell. Well, instead of adjusting intelligently, you undercut yourself until there's nothing left, just to win it back, just to stick it to that other person, even if it means losing money. So how can you fight back? Well, number one, set sourcing criteria and actually stick to it. DSRS is what we're going to call this for short, because it is a mouthful. It thrives on emotion. Right? We've got to fight it with numbers, okay, which means you need to know your numbers. Profit threshold, sales rank corridors. I'm not going to say a max sales rank because I don't think that's right. What I mean by sales rank corridors is maybe if something is always under 20,000 in rank, you buy X number of units. But if it's between 200 and 300,000 in rank, you buy a smaller X number of units, right? Maybe you have max competition you're willing to go against. Also a little too narrow in my opinion. But you decide all these things without emotion. You rethink your old inventory. Date your inventory. Don't marry it. Like, get this tattooed somewhere, okay? There needs to be a certain cutoff period where you just dump them and leave them on the curb. Normalize taking small losses. This is business, all right? Every business in the world has some form of loss, and it needs to be baked into the business, okay? Every loss in this business particularly is really tuition, all right? Accept it, write it off, move on after you've learned from it, of course. You don't want to let sunk costs become a sunk business. Run autopilot repricing. Corey's not here. Otherwise, I would point to him. But get a freaking repricer, okay? Now, I'm not saying that you should go in and just let it do whatever it wants, okay? Set up your rules or the AI if you're used to it, but give it corridors, set the floor prices, let the tool win the war rather than you going in and trying to beat up everybody to get more of the buy box. I keep seeing a few newer sellers on Twitter talk about how much buy box percentage they have and what their inventory turn rate is. And honestly, they're probably leaving money on the table. You don't necessarily want 36% buy box percentage. That might be a little too fast and you might be leaving a little too much margin on the table. On the other hand, you don't want to have a 1.2 inventory turn rate. You want it to be up like 2.5, 2.7, okay? But do not get down in the trenches. Don't get into trench warfare with your margins, all right? Let something handle it for you. And then finally, use deprival superreaction syndrome to spot other buyer behavior as well. Like this syndrome, it cuts both ways. It's not just you. I'm not just pointing the finger at you. I've got 4 fingers pointing back at me too. Your competitors are also irrational about loss because it's the human baseline. It's just a default setting in our brain. It's our lizard brain, if you will, keeping us protected. And if you're not aware of it, it can run your business. But if you are aware of it and you think about it, well, you can outthink it and make better decisions.
Man, this is such a good one. Munger is the man.
Munger is the man.
So, give you how I'm vulnerable to it. First example that popped into my head, and then I'll give you an example of how my VAs are vulnerable to it as well. I actually had to get up and walk away as I was sourcing last night. It was a frustrating session trying to get today's list out, and I got stuck. I set minimums for my lead list, right? It's 30% ROI and $5 profit per item, right? That's the bare minimum. So I run into scenarios where it's something like $6 or $7 profit and 29% ROI, right? So it's a good lead, but it doesn't match the criteria that I said I would match for my subscribers. So I find myself grinding longer than I should, trying to find that extra 1% just so I can get it onto a lead list, just so it could be a good lead, and oftentimes, if I just kind of kept sourcing and just moved on a little bit quicker, I probably would have found an even better lead, which is often the case. So, so that's a little bit. I mean, I have to enforce certain metrics, pretty strictly in that scenario. But that's an easy way. But I know that other sellers kind of do it too. It's like, oh man, that almost is the key word. It's such a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous word to kind of let sink into your sourcing. And then the example that my VAs, oftentimes I get several days behind on their leads that they put on the spreadsheet. It's very rarely am I current, as far as what they did the day before having reviewed it, right? So I don't know if they get upset that, they don't, however upset, that you think they can get. But if I find something that has dropped in price and is no longer a good lead, doesn't hit the metrics that I set for them, or it goes out of stock, they'll try to debate me on it and say, well, no, it was a good lead, or and I think basically they're saying, if you had reviewed it fast enough, it would have been a good lead. It would have counted, you big dummy, is essentially what they're saying. But my point is, I understand your frustration. However, that's not over a longer time period. It's not a good lead, because had I gotten to it, had I bought it, that price depression would have happened as it was in transit, so that's not good. You want the price stability, you want something that's going to stay profitable for a longer period of time. So essentially it turned out it wasn't a good lead. And in this case, it's almost better that I didn't review it right away, because, it didn't turn out to have the long-term benefits that we look for, in good leads. So they get a little frustrated there, but it's like, I understand, but you got to look at the bigger picture, like what you're doing this for, so that almost, you can make some really bad decisions, if you saw something and you're like, oh, we on the Monday night show, we find a bunch of stuff, because we go over Storefront Stalker Pro. We find a lot of stuff that it seems like the most logical reason that it's not profitable, or that we can't find it profitably, is that we probably missed a sale. And that's another thing that the Keepa feature that we talked about in the top of the show. That's another value there, is that it could probably help you learn sales cycles. Because if you're seeing people replenish stuff over and over again, you're going to figure out what store they're likely getting it from, and then you can kind of fine tune and know that sellers that you're looking at are getting it profitably on a regular basis. It's a sales cycle worth learning, and it can eventually benefit you too. So, but yeah, you find that almost it'll force you into some bad decisions, because you feel like you were just a day or two late on something. So that kind of lends itself to taking more chances so that you don't miss the next one. It's always funny. It's probably ultimately a bad thing, but when people talk about let's take crypto, for example, when people kind of look back and people who took a stab and bought some Bitcoin back in the day, there's always that sentiment that you hear people say, oh, if I had only hung on to it, it would be worth X now, or I would have made X number of dollars, and it's, people don't understand. They kind of take those time frames, and obviously they'll take the maximum amount of money that they would have made. Like, oh, I would have made $100,000 on $5,000 if I had just hung on to it. The odds of you getting that timing right are near impossible. It's such a low percentage. It's so close to 0% trying to time the market, but yet we kind of make these sweeping statements like, oh, if only, when in reality, you never would have realized that full potential,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So.
Yeah. I see that article about the guy who spent something like today's equivalent of $1 million on a pizza with Bitcoin, and that's a great example of that.
Yeah.
All right. It's a little slow in the chat today. That's all right. But if you have questions, now's the time. We're going to start going through them. But before we do that, Luke has got a big shout for your, on the plus side, Chris, your lists tend to remind him how many brands he's still ungated in. Going through today's list right now. That's fantastic.
Appreciate it, Luke.
Yeah, you'd be awful surprised. And later this week, I believe I'll have it done later this week. Later this week, I've got something coming. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful to a lot of people in this time of uncertainty and irritation over ungating. All right, Jeff. I noticed that some FBA OA sellers are able to hide their stock numbers in some data tools like SellerAmp. What voodoo are they using to hide their data? Well, if it's just not pulling stock numbers at all, that's probably just an issue with where that data is being pulled from. But if it's showing like they've got 3 units, but then they probably have it set to a max order quantity inside of Seller Central for that particular ASIN. That's about all there is. Potato. I appreciate this. This is very kind of you to notice. Thank you. I am, as of this morning, I am down 37 and some change total in pounds. So yeah, it sucked to be quite honest. It's not fun, but now that I was thinking about this the other day because I made a tweet about Amazon earlier today about motivation following just doing the work. It was not motivation. It was just the fact that I wanted to lose some weight. That was the goal. And then I just was like, okay, I gotta willpower through this thing. And then the motivation kicks in. Like I was telling somebody the other day, I got my family donuts and I got some chocolate frosting on my thumb. And now I'm to the point where I didn't even lick the frosting off my finger. Like, I just let it go. So still got a lot more to go. But we'll get there. Getting some off-scale wins, which is huge in my opinion, maybe even bigger than the on-scale wins. So,
yeah, great job, man.
Thank you. Christian, sorry I joined late, but what new Keepa feature did you discuss at the start? Well, inside of the seller overview, you now get to see the top overlapping competitors. That's it. The top overlapping competitors. You have to go back and watch the other things that we talked about. I can't re-go through the whole thing, but it should be a useful little tweak. Yeah, donut day is a rough one. Absolutely. And Christian, am I doing keto? No, I don't do fad diets anymore. There is one thing that makes you lose weight, and one thing only, and that's calories in, calories out. Doesn't matter what you eat or how much you eat. It is all about how many calories you burn compared to how many you consume. I know around what my basal metabolic rate is. I had a scan done years and years ago. So I just make sure to stay under that every day. Try to eat some bulky foods, eat a lot of protein so you can reduce as much muscle mass erosion as possible. And that's about it.
Did I tell you about the lady at work that was putting butter in her coffee as a weight loss?
I remember those days. It was Bulletproof Coffee. So yeah. I hate to admit it, but I tried to board that train for a while, and I bought the Bulletproof hot chocolate, put butter in it, and I mean it was delicious, but of course it was a tablespoon of butter, inside a hot chocolate. It was great.
The one thing I realized is how calorie dense peanut butter actually is.
Right.
Which makes me very sad. I'm a big fan of peanut butter. But my God, you can take in 200-300 calories just licking the knife, making your kids a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That stuff is dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's horrible. It sucks too because peanut butter is the best. So yeah. Now this is not a cooking show, or and this is probably not something we should be talking about. But I'll tell you what. I've not let anything sweet, no cake, no pies, no cookies, no nothing pass these lips in 77 days. All right. But the sweet tooth was really getting to me. And I was worried that my willpower would break. So I did something, and when I made it, I tried it, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing I've ever had. And I was like, babe, I told my wife, I was like, you got to try this. I didn't call Chris babe. I was talking to my wife. I was like, you got to try this. It's so good. And she tried it, and she about spit it out. But I took an apple. Okay. And I chopped it up into little pieces. I put a little bit of Splenda on it, and don't come at me with Splenda, this and then don't. Okay, you're wrong. Put a little Splenda on it, put a little cinnamon on it, heated that up in the microwave for about 45 seconds, and then you take some vanilla low-fat Greek yogurt on top of it. And I took the low-fat yogurt and popped it in the freezer for about a half an hour, so it's really cold like ice cream. Tasted like apple pie a la mode. It was amazing. And it was all under 150 calories. It was fantastic.
Yeah. It's funny how you're depriving yourself, which, some people don't like that word, but that's essentially what it is. And it's okay. It's called discipline. But it's funny how you're so restrictive that it's funny to, what ends up being a treat, and what, those lightly salted rice cakes, I never would have eaten one of those, I mean, it was like cardboard. It was kind of like eating the pizza box, but when you can chew that much for just 35 calories and you're on a diet, and, you're sticking to it and taking it seriously. I mean, that's a trade-off that I'm willing to I'm willing to do for sure.
Right. Potato, Ninja Creamy is on the wish list. One of these days, it'll make its way to the house.
Yeah, that thing's awesome.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns for today? I want to make sure we get all you guys' questions answered. Otherwise, we'll wrap this up early and get back to our families. I'll tell you what. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's funny. You retweeted the Toy Investor, which we did get a verbal commitment for a podcast episode.
It's locked in for July 7th.
Excellent. He posted. It's funny. He posted a lead as an example of what not to do, and we actually covered it on the Monday night show. A week or two ago. Yeah, it was because Storefront Stalker Pro has the column for the brand name, and he posted a picture of the product photo with a rev seller panel next to it, and I was like, I kind of turned into the Leo DiCaprio meme. I was like, ugh. So, but that was a good point. If you're on Twitter and you haven't checked that out, make sure you look at it. It's excellent tip.
Ro, lately I've seen that someone has been changing the brand name of some of my ASINs. They change it to a non-existent brand, so they probably just made something up. So there's no possibility to get ungated in that brand. So chances are they're changing it to something they have brand registered then. If they've worked it out so that they have a brand that they've registered and they make it so nobody can get ungated in it, kind of sounds like what's happening. We used to call that hijacking a listing. I would imagine that over time you may actually see that listing become a different product. It sort of goes slowly and then all at once when this kind of thing happens. Now, the unfortunate thing is you're right. Amazon has made it much, much more difficult for the regular Amazon seller to fix these kind of things. And it's one of the reasons, honestly, why I think you need to use some sort of alert system nowadays for the ASINs that you're on. It's a good idea, just so you can keep aware, because you can't check every single ASIN every single day. What can you do? The only thing you can do is try to get evidence of what the brand used to be. I would say go to the Wayback Machine or archive.org, but they don't really archive Amazon product detail pages very well. But if there's some way that you can show the catalog team that there's a difference, maybe they will change it back. But unfortunately, that's all you can do. There is nothing that you can do from your end. You could try submitting a flat file, but that probably won't do it either. And there's not really a loophole that they're taking advantage of. Chances are, so this is not going to sound nice here, but here's what I think it probably is. It is probably a seller from another country who may have an in with someone that works at Amazon. It is not unknown or a secret that certain sellers will bribe Amazon employees. There have been Amazon employees fired over it, and it still happens. Are you guys going to ASD? Any advice to those attending? So, I don't think that I will make it to ASD this year. I've already missed the spring ASD. So, and going to Las Vegas in August. Well, that literally sounds like booking a trip to hell. So I'm going to say no. However, you should go. It's a good trade show. I don't know that it's the best trade show to go to any longer. I think that you could find better regional trade shows at 10, the number 10 times times.com. Matter of fact, I was looking at it the other night. My son asked to go to VidCon in California in 8 days, and I'm like, that's not happening, dude. So I was trying to find if there was anything similar to that in our region, and that's where I went. So, but if you go to 10 times, you can find regional trade shows of all kinds in your area, in the whole state that you're in surrounding states, that kind of stuff. Incredible, place to get information. Matter of fact, I found out that there is a YouTube convention in Cleveland, of all places. But now, if you're going to go to ASD, number one, comfortable shoes and business casual apparel for while you're at the trade show. 2, do some homework ahead of time. Okay, get on the ASD website, write down any of the suppliers who are going to be there that look like they might be interesting. Do a little research on them, do a little background. That way you can go armed with some information. Okay, if it's a particular brand, like let's say Raw Cones is going to be there. They seem to have a much higher amount of cannabis things than they used to when I would go regularly. So let's say that raw paper, raw cones are there, and you see that on Amazon their listings, are garbage. Well, you could go and be like, hey, I want to get an account with you guys, and maybe they're not interested, but you say, hey, I could fix your listings. I know how to do these things. Go with all of that kind of information. Did I miss the big gating announcement, or is it still forthcoming? There's no gating announcement coming that I'm aware of. Jeff doesn't text me ahead of time and let me know about those kind of things. He just sends me dank memes. But I have something coming that will be helpful. I'm almost there. I want to make this the best resource that I've ever seen available. And so it requires a lot more work than I was expecting. So I'm going to try to finish that up over the next couple of days. And then it's going to require a video and an SOP and all of that stuff, which I'm going to share all for free. I'm not going to charge a penny. So. All right. So Chris, I've been doing a little handyman work, a little construction around the house lately. And I've come to one conclusion. It's not all equally enjoyable. For example, enlarging a drilled hole that I've already done is boring, but fastening pieces of metal together is riveting. And I'm sorry. No. That's the best I got for today, and I apologize.
That's it was more setup than the payoff warranted.
Yes, it was.
Did you hear Bigfoot and Bigfoot keeps getting confused with Sasquatch?
No.
Yet he never complains.
All right. On that one, guys, we're out. We'll be back on Wednesday at 5:30. We'll do this all over again with a little news and your questions. And in the meantime, follow us over on Twitter. Reach out on Facebook. We'll be glad to help anytime we can. All right. That's the pod, everybody.